Welcome to the Personal CFO. Today we're talking about the 3 plans that you may have in retirement. In our last video, we've introduced the 3 different options, which is capital utilization, capital preservation, and capital growth. And the simpler way of saying that is your line in retirement goes up, your line in retirement is flat, or your line in retirement goes down. And in this specific video, we're going to spend some time and we're going to talk about capital preservation. We're going to say, what does this really mean? Who could this be right for? And what are some of the things to think about if this is what your retirement looks like or this is what you want it to look like? And so who might this be for? Well, before we get into that, let's talk about what's another way of saying capital preservation, because that sounds a little too fancy. Capital preservation just means you want your money to stay flat or level and you want to live off the interest or the gains. So you don't really want to see the value in your portfolio necessarily go down or up. Now, who might this be right for? Who have I seen this work out well for? This can be a good solution for those who say, well, I'd like to live my life comfortably in retirement. I don't want to do anything wild. At the same time, I would like to leave something about what we have now for either my kids or charity or grandkids or whatever. So there's something that you really want to leave, maybe not too much, but roughly what you have today. So you want to be able to live off the interest and the gains and move on from there. Now, what is something really important to think about when you're dealing with capital preservation or spending my interest and gains? Something that can be tricky here is understanding that this straight line is using flat assumptions. It's assuming things like inflation and rates of returns are constant or stagnant, and they're not. They go up and down all the time, right? So you might have an average rate of return of 6 or 7%, just throwing out numbers, but in reality, the numbers are down 10, positive 10, they're all over the board. And what can get people hung up with mentally here is, well, when the market goes up and it's up 12 or 13, great, we have a lot of extra money. But when it goes down, well, it's not like you're not going to spend anything in retirement. So the challenge can be when you're trying to live off your gains and your interest, it's important to understand to come up with a rule of thumb for your spending rather than your literal gains, because in a moderate portfolio even, you might not have gains every year, but you're always going to have property taxes and you're always going to have a dining out bill. And so it's important to be thinking about, hey, this isn't if the market goes down or up necessarily, it's what's an average reasonable rate of return, and that's our spending through retirement when you're looking at leaving some money to your heirs. Again, whether that's kids, charity, or whoever. So again, this could really be helpful and could be a good plan for somebody that says, we don't really want our numbers, we don't want to leave a ton of money. We don't need those numbers growing up at the expense of sacrificing our lifestyle. At the same time, we really want to make sure we don't run out of money. So we want it to be kind of a flat line. And we see that a lot. And as a reminder, what to watch out for is use rules of thumb for your spending. So like a percentage rather than we'll spend the gains when it goes up, because it doesn't do that every year. And that will be a very stressful retirement where 2/3 of the years you're feeling good, and then 1 out of every 3 years you have no money to spend. That's not really feasible. So again, use averages, and that's going to be helpful when you're thinking about capital preservation for your retirement plan. In our next 2 videos, we'll talk about what does an upward sloping chart look like, which is capital growth, and what does a downward sloping chart look like, which is capital utilization. So I hope this was helpful. As always, thanks for investing your time at the Personal CFO.